My name is Sarah, and I want to tell you a story about learning English. When I was little, I didn't know any English. I would sit in class, feeling so lost. All the other kids were talking and laughing, but I didn't understand anything. I wanted to cry. I felt alone. I remember one time, a girl in my class asked me something in English. I looked at her, confused. She waited for me to answer, but I couldn't. I didn't know the words. That day, I decided I needed to learn. I wanted to join the conversations. I didn't want to feel alone anymore. Learning English was hard at first. I started with simple words, like hello and goodbye every night. I would sit with a book and try to remember new words. My mom would sit beside me and help. I remember her saying, "Don't give up. Every word you learn brings you closer to a new world." As I learned more words, I started to feel more confident. I practiced every day. I would say the words out loud, even when no one was listening. Slowly, I could understand more in class. One day, the same girl asked me a question again. This time, I answered her. She smiled, and I felt so proud. English was helping me make friends. One thing that helped me was listening to English songs. I would sing along, even if I didn't understand all the words. It made learning fun. I loved the way the words sounded, like a beautiful melody. It was like each song was a small lesson. Watching English movies also helped. At first, I would watch with subtitles. Slowly, I started to understand without them. I remember watching a movie and understanding a whole sentence without reading the subtitles. I cried that day. I knew I was improving. Reading simple books was another tip. I started with children's books, books with pictures and easy words. I would read 1 page a day, slowly learning new words. Each time I learned a new word, I felt like I was getting closer to understanding the world around me. Speaking was the hardest. I was scared to make mistakes. I was scared people would laugh at me. But my mom always told me it's okay to make mistakes. Every mistake is a step forward, so I started speaking in English, little by little. Even if it was just one sentence, I would try. I would say, "Good morning" to my teacher, and it felt like a big win. Practice, practice, practice. That's the secret. You have to practice every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. One of my teachers told me, learning a language is like planting a tree. Every day you water it, it grows a little. One day it will be a big, strong tree. I always remembered that. English also helped me in difficult moments. I remember when I was feeling very sad one day. I was sitting alone in the park, crying. A kind old woman came and sat next to me. She asked, "Are you okay?" in English. I didn't know what to say at first, but then I remembered the words I had learned. I told her, "I'm sad she listened to me," and we talked. It was a small conversation, but it made me feel better. English had helped me in that moment. It connected me to someone kind. As I continued learning, I moved from basic words to more advanced sentences. I started learning grammar. Grammar was confusing at first. I didn't understand why there were so many rules. But one day, my teacher told me, grammar is like the bones of a language. Without it, the language can't stand. That helped me. I started paying attention to grammar, learning one rule at a time. Writing was also important. I started keeping a small diary. Every night, I would write a sentence or two in English. It didn't have to be perfect. It just had to be something. Slowly, my sentences became longer. I was expressing myself more in English. One day, I wrote a letter to my best friend in English. I was so proud. When she read it, she smiled and said, "You've come so far." I knew then that learning English wasn't just about the words. It was about connecting with people, sharing feelings, and understanding the world better. I also joined an English club at school. There, we would speak English together, play games, and learn new words. It was a safe space where I didn't have to worry about making mistakes. We all helped each other. It was like having a team, and we were all working towards the same goal. I made new friends there, friends who understood what it felt like to be scared of speaking in a new language. Learning English isn't easy. There will be times when you want to give up. I know, because I felt that way many times. There were nights when I cried because I didn't understand something, but I kept going. Every word, every sentence, every conversation made me stronger. It's important to remember that learning a language takes time. Be patient with yourself. Here are some tips that helped me. Start with simple words and sentences. Listen to English music and sing along. Watch English movies with subtitles. Read simple books every day. Speak English, even if it's just a little. Practice every day, even if it's only for 10 minutes. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. They help you learn. Write in English, even if it's just a few sentences. Find a friend or a group to practice with. Be patient. Learning takes time. Learning English changed my life. It opened doors for me. I could talk to new people, understand different cultures, and express my feelings better. It gave me confidence. Now, when I travel or meet someone new, I don't feel scared. I feel excited to connect with them. As I continued my journey of learning English, I faced many moments of doubt. There were times when I thought I wasn't good enough, that maybe I would never fully understand the language. But every time I felt that way, I remembered something my grandmother used to say: the sun always shines after the rain. One memory that stayed with me was when I had to give a speech in front of my class. The teacher had asked everyone to prepare something in English. I was so scared. The night before, I stayed up late, practicing my words. I stood in front of the mirror, repeating the sentences over and over again. But my hands were shaking and my heart was pounding. I thought, what if I mess up? What if everyone laughs at me? The next day, when it was my turn, I stood in front of the class, frozen. I couldn't speak. Tears filled my eyes because I felt like a failure. But then, I remembered why I started learning English. I wanted to connect. I wanted to understand. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and began. The words didn't come out perfectly, but they came. By the end of my speech, I saw smiles, not laughter. That day, I realized something important. English is not just about speaking perfectly. It's about having the courage to try. Courage became my guide as I moved from learning basic English to more advanced levels. With courage, I started reading more complex books. I remember picking up my first novel. It was long, and the words were hard. I didn't understand everything, but I didn't give up. I would read one page a day. Sometimes I had to look up many words, but every new word I learned felt like finding a hidden treasure. One of the most powerful tools in learning English was repetition. My teacher always said, "Repetition is the mother of all learning." I didn't fully understand that at first, but soon I realized it was true. Every time I heard a new word or phrase, I would repeat it to myself. I would write it down in my diary, say it out loud, and use it in a sentence. Slowly, the words became familiar, like old friends. It was no longer about memorizing, but about truly understanding and owning the language. Another important lesson was learning to be patient with myself. Learning English is not a race, it's a journey. There were days when I felt like I wasn't making any progress, but progress isn't always fast. It's like climbing a mountain. Sometimes you move quickly, other times you move slowly. But as long as you keep moving, you'll reach the top. I often reminded myself, it's okay to take your time. One day, I decided to take my learning outside of the classroom. I visited a nearby cafe where tourists often gathered. I sat at a table, sipping my tea, and listened to their conversations. At first, I didn't understand much, but as I listened, I started picking up familiar words. It felt like magic. The English I had been learning wasn't just in books or in the classroom. It was alive. It was real. Speaking to strangers in English was terrifying, but it was also one of the most rewarding experiences. One time, I met a girl from another country who didn't speak my native language. We sat together and spoke in English. Our conversation was simple, but it was filled with meaning. We shared stories, laughed, and connected in a way I never thought possible. English had given me the key to unlock friendships with people from all over the world. As I became more confident in my English, I started to challenge myself even more. I joined an online group where people from different countries practiced speaking English together. At first, I was nervous, but soon I realized that everyone was just like me. We were all learning. We were all making mistakes, and that was okay. In fact, it was beautiful. Each mistake was a step forward. Each conversation made me a little stronger. One of my favorite ways to learn new words was through stories. I would read short stories and try to guess the meaning of new words from the context. I remember reading a story about a young girl who traveled to a new country. She didn't know the language, but she kept trying. Her courage inspired me. I realized that I was just like her. We were both on a journey to learn, to grow, and to connect with the world. There was also a time when I used to feel embarrassed about my accent. I thought it made me sound different, and I didn't like it. But one day, I met a woman who had a beautiful accent. She spoke English with confidence, and her accent was part of what made her speech so unique. She told me, "Your accent is your story. It shows where you come from." And that's something to be proud of. From that day on, I embraced my accent. I realized that English wasn't about sounding perfect. It was about expressing who I am. As I moved from basic to advanced English, I learned more about grammar and sentence structure. It was challenging, but I always tried to remind myself that every new rule I learned was another step toward fluency. I used apps and online tools to practice grammar. There were days when I felt frustrated, but I never let myself quit. I kept going because I knew that every little bit of effort counted. One of the most helpful things I did was set small goals. Instead of trying to learn everything at once, I focused on one thing at a time. One week, I would focus on learning 10 new words. The next week, I would focus on improving my speaking. By breaking my learning into smaller parts, I made the process less overwhelming. There was a special moment in my learning journey when I realized that English had become a part of me. I was at a store, and without thinking, I asked the cashier a question in English. It was so natural that I didn't even realize I had spoken in a new language until later. English had gone from being something I studied to something I lived. It was part of my everyday life. English has opened so many doors for me. It has given me the ability to connect with people from different cultures, to explore new ideas, and to express myself in ways I never thought possible. But more than anything, it has taught me the power of perseverance. Learning English is not just about mastering a language. It's about believing in yourself, even when things are difficult. To anyone reading this, I want to say, don't give up. There will be days when you feel like you're not making progress, but remember that every step forward, no matter how small, is progress. Keep going. Keep practicing. Keep believing in yourself. English is not just a language. It's a bridge to the world. Every word you learn is a step toward new opportunities, new friendships, and new adventures. So, take your time, be patient, and enjoy the journey. You're not just learning English, you're opening doors to a brighter future. One beautiful thought I want to leave you with is this: learning English is like opening a window to the world. Every word you learn lets in a little more light. Soon, the whole world will be bright with possibilities. Keep learning, keep practicing, and don't give up. Tell me, how are you feeling about your English learning journey? Have you faced any challenges, or have you had any special moments that made you feel proud? I would love to hear your stories. Let's keep learning together